Hi there, this is David and welcome to our review of Triangle Strategy for the Nintendo Switch. If you couldn't tell by the title, this is a strategy RPG in the same vein as Tactics Ogre or Final Fantasy Tactics, but done in the HD 2D Octopath style that's so in vogue nowadays. But does this game live up to the hype? Or at least live up to the games that inspired it? Let's find out. Taking place in the land of Norzelia, there's a tenuous peace between the three kingdoms. However, that peace is quickly shattered on the eve of our hero, Serenoa's wedding. It doesn't take long for kings to become assassinated, towns to be burned to the ground, nobles to be backstabbed, and invasions to take place. A lot has already been said by many other people about the story, and just how verbose it all is. And while I do tend to agree somewhat with them, honestly, I was okay with it, mainly because I found myself hooked by the entire story. There's no anime nonsense to be found here. This is all straight up political intrigue with adult problems, and I am here for it. Yeah, it does start off slow, but that's because it's setting the stage and giving background information. But by around chapter 5, be prepared to be enthralled, waiting with bated breath just to see what's going to happen next. I heard a lot of other people complaining about the voice acting, but I'm my own person, and I didn't think it was all that bad. However, I am pretty forgiving whenever it comes to stuff like that, and quite honestly, I really didn't listen to much of it because I read the dialogue at my own pace, and I cut those voice actors off at every occasion. If I sat there and I listened to all the voice acting in all the story sequences, they could take up to about 30 minutes each, and ain't nobody got time for all that. So I just sped read through it, and I was able to get through most of the cutscenes in about 10 minutes or so. Combat takes place on grids, just like the games that it was inspired by, and if you've played those games, then you know exactly what you're in here for, just kind of at turbo speed. Combat is quick, clean, and very easy to learn. You have your standard healers, archers, casters, and melee, along with some esoteric characters like trappers, merchants, and acrobats to round out your roster. And if you want to experiment with some of the stranger characters, go right ahead. They have taken a page out of Suikoden's book, and if a party member is below the recommended level threshold, then they will gain levels at the rate of 1 per action. It is wonderful, and it makes leveling up the bloated roster completely painless. Something that I can really appreciate in games like these are when the objectives vary. Yeah, having kill all enemies is perfectly fine, as long as it's not, all the time. And Triangle Strategy takes that to heart. There's all sorts of different things to do here, such as lasting a certain amount of turns, saving a certain party member, opening up a drawbridge, commandeering a boat, or not letting the enemies escape. Also, in a nice twist, many times you actually start out in the strategic position, like on a high ground, defending a fortress, surrounded by wooden barriers to protect you, or on a town's rooftops. It's a wonderful, refreshing take on the battles because many times in the past, only the enemies began in those advantageous positions, so I do love how they switch it up. But be careful, there are plenty of times when you're going to be caught in a pincer attack too. Magic has been greatly improved as well. Now it does not hurt your own allies, and it comes with secondary elemental effects too. Ice freezes the ground, slowing down any units crossing it. Fire causes it to burn, which inflicts damage and can melt the ice into puddles. And God help the enemies if you strike a puddle with lightning. MP is also a thing of the past. Every party member uses TP instead, and you begin each battle with 3 TP, and you can regenerate it at the rate of 1 per turn. It's a nice change, and it's really simple to keep track of. Speaking of simple, they instituted a turn order gauge similar to Final Fantasy X's, so you know exactly whose turn is coming up next too. There are difficulty levels that you can choose from the get-go, and even on easy, bosses can still be rather hard. Thankfully, there's no random encounters, but they're not needed, because if you are defeated in battle, you just get to restart with all the experience that you've already gained. There is literally no downside to dying. You just kind of re-strategize, redo your character roster, and fight your way through it with a higher leveled party. The Encampment is where you go to buy items, engage in mock battles, promote your class, or forge new weaponry. However, I kinda feel like it should have just been like another menu. It would have made all the upgrading a lot quicker. And now, I do have a few minor nitpicks with this equipment upgrade system. Mainly, there's no real equipment to actually be had. You can upgrade your weapon and your stats, but that's not the same thing as finding a nice new sword or shiny piece of armor. There are accessories, but they're very limited in number, and good luck actually buying them, because you're going to be strapped for gold the entire game, so you can pretty much only equip what you find. Upgrading your stats and your weapons requires materials, which also cost money. Then, when you go to actually upgrade them, it costs additional gold to do so. It's a precarious balancing act trying to figure out who deserves the upgrades the most, since your gold is so scarce. And not to mention, the merchant only has a limited supply of materials to sell you as well. It does kind of make you feel like your back is up against the wall, and it makes those exploration sequences all that much more important, so that you really do have to go out of your way to find every last spare scrap of materials and gold that's lying around. Now, let's talk about a major selling point of the game, the Scales of Conviction, where you can choose where to go or what to do. Only, you don't actually choose. Your party instead decides what you do, and it's your job to convince them to do what you want them to do. Rather than instituting like a good, neutral, or evil choice system, all of the answers are kind of shrouded in mystery. You don't really know what's going to get you the best conviction scores. And if you miss talking to a particular person during a missable exploration scene, you could potentially miss out on information, which then locks out certain choices, further inhibiting your conviction growth. For the most part, this really wasn't an issue for me though, and my party did what I wanted them to. Except towards the end of the game, where they all decided to face the enemy head on, rather than sneak into a castle like I wanted them to. Conviction is important in other ways too. Depending on your levels, certain characters will join up with your party. I had a shaman join up with me on chapter 15, but she joined up with somebody else on my Discord channel on chapter 5. So that just goes to show you how different everybody's games can be. Also, for all the hype of choices actually matter, they still kind of, don't. Choices are made in isolation of one another. Once you make one decision, it's really never going to come back to haunt you after a chapter's over. No one's like going to come out of the shadows and backstab you for killing their brother back in chapter 2 or anything like that. It's all pretty basic and formulaic in that way, unfortunately. Now, everything that I've said so far has been pretty good, or just a tiny nitpick. Don't get me wrong, I love the game. But there is one part that I just have to call out because it's just the biggest bullshit of bullshits that I've ever seen. I'll just affectionately refer to it as the salt crystal problem. About midway through the game, you're tasked with exploring a town to find a key, but you're not told what this key is. So you look around and you find something interesting, so you think, oh, this must be the key. Then you take it to the elder and you say, hey, is this item the key? And the elder's like, nope. But rather than sending you back out into the village to, continue looking for that key, the game instead just gives you a game over. It literally sends you back to the title screen and says, hey, load up your save and try again. This took me completely out of it, and after getting 2 game overs in a row, I said screw it, and I just Googled the solution. Triangle Strategy is going to take you roughly 30 hours to complete. However, the New Game Plus does add quite a bit more substance, such as how many conviction points you'll get for each answer, and a timeline to see what choices you made already so you can see different outcomes in your second playthrough, as well as new characters that will join you. Other than the salt crystal problem, I had an absolute blast with this game. I haven't had this much fun since about Final Fantasy Tactics itself, and I would say that it's right up there as one of the best strategy RPGs on the Switch. So if you're on the fence, this game has my wholehearted endorsement. How did you feel about the game? Do you agree or disagree? Let me know in the comments. And if you like this video and wanted to hear on the channel, please consider supporting me over on Patreon, heading on over to Twitch for some streaming fun, or joining the Discord to chat and hang out. The links to them all can be found in the video description. This has been David, and if you like this, please like, comment, and subscribe, and have a good day.